It was exactly 2:47 a.m. In the small town of Black Creek in the U.S. state of Oregon, the cold wind was shaking the trees as if someone was walking hidden among them. Ethan Walker was driving his car slowly on a deserted road. He was an urban explorer by profession. He would go to abandoned buildings where ordinary people were afraid to go. His YouTube channel was quite popular, but he wanted real fame with a video that would shake the whole world. At that moment, an unknown email came to his mobile. The subject was only 3 words: "Don't go alone." Inside the email was only one picture: an old church. Below it was written, "St. Mary's Church, basement never open." Below was only one line: "If you can handle the truth, come tonight." No name, no number, just the location. Ethan immediately turned on the GPS. The church was only 15 minutes away. He smiled. This is what I needed. The church was about 100 years old. Broken glass, moss on the walls, rusty bell, and strange silence. A silence in which even his own breathing felt very loud. Ethan turned on the camera. "Guys, tonight we are going to enter the most mysterious church in America. People say that its basement has not been opened for the last 60 years. He entered. The church was plunged into complete darkness. Only his flashlight was dancing on the walls. The wooden floor creaked with every step. Suddenly, he felt as if someone was walking on the balcony above. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan immediately turned the light up. There was no one there. Maybe it's Oldwood. He consoled himself. But on the camera screen, a woman in a white dress appeared for just a second. Ethan immediately looked back. There was no one there. At the end of the church, he found a huge iron door. It had chains on it, an old plaque on top, basement, and it was written in red at the bottom, "Do not open." Ethan laughed. Why would I come here if I didn't have to open it? He cut the chain. As soon as the door opened, a very cold air came out from below, so cold that his breath turned into fog. It was completely dark below. The stairs were very old. Every step made a strange sound. The church bell began to ring, even though there was no one there. The basement was no ordinary basement. It was huge. There were thousands of names written on the walls. Each name had a date, and all the dates were different. But one thing was common. After each date, there was only one word written: listened. Ethan read one name: Michael Ross, 1998. Listened. Another: Emily Carter, 2007. Listened. Third: Lucas Hall, 1981. Listened. What's all this? At that moment, someone behind him said very softly, "Ethan." He turned around immediately. There was no one. Then again, "Ethan." This time the voice was right next to his ear. A cold wave ran through his entire body. He stepped forward. An old tape recorder was placed in the middle of the room. It was covered in dust. A note was placed next to it. "Play me." Ethan pointed the camera at the recorder. This might be part of an old investigation. He pressed play. At first, there was only noise. Then suddenly, his own voice came from the recorder. "I'm Ethan Walker. If you're hearing this, then I'm dead." Ethan's hands trembled. This is impossible. His voice continued on the recorder. "He's standing behind you. Don't turn around. If you see him, he'll hear you too." Ethan's breath caught. He could clearly feel that there was really someone behind him, but he didn't dare turn around. At that moment, a strange shadow appeared on his camera's live screen. A tall being, about 7 feet. The face was completely black, but the eyes, white, like a burning light bulb. The being was standing right behind Ethan. Ethan's breathing quickened. The last line of the recorder was heard. "If you're listening to this, then it's too late." At that moment, the camera automatically shut off, and there was the sound of the basement door closing loudly. The basement door slammed shut, and Ethan's heart started to pound out of his chest. He tried to open the door with all his might, but he couldn't move. At that moment, he heard someone slow breathing behind him. H. Ethan shook his flashlight. The same 7-foot-tall shadow. Black body. White shining eyes. but this time it was closer than before. Ethan immediately stepped back and said, "Who are you?" There was no answer, but a voice echoed in his mind. "I don't speak. I just listen." This voice was not in his ears, but directly in his mind. Ethan put his hands over his ears, but the sound did not stop. Suddenly, all the names written on the walls of the basement began to glow red. A new date began to appear under each name. Ethan pointed his flashlight at a wall, and his blood froze. A new name was emerging at the bottom. Ethan Walker. Today's date was being written under it. He felt as if someone had already written his fate. He ran away in fear. There was a long corridor in the basement, with old wooden doors on both sides. The first door opened. There were only old telephones inside. But the surprising thing was that all the phones started ringing at the same time. Turn. Ethan picked up a phone. A weak voice came from the other end. "Please, get out of here." He remembers every sound. Suddenly the line was cut off. At that moment, all the phones went silent. At the end of the hallway was another room. When he entered, hundreds of old audio tapes were lined up on the walls. Each tape had a human name on it. Michael, Emily, Lucas, and then Ethan. The tape with his name on it was brand new. He picked it up with trembling hands. The tape was still warm, as if it had been recorded moments before. He pressed play. He heard his own scream coming from the tape. "Run. He's after you." Ethan looked back in panic. The room was empty, but when he looked back, the shadow was standing just a few steps away. Its white eyes were staring at Ethan without blinking. Then, for the first time, the creature moved its lips. "Now. I will keep your voice." The entire basement started shaking violently. Dust started falling from the ceiling. And in the far darkness, another door slowly opened by itself. A child's crying could be heard from inside the door. Ethan took a fearful step towards the door. And at that moment his flashlight went out. The basement was completely dark. Ethan's flashlight had turned off, but the baby's cries could still be heard. "Mommy, get me out of here." The voice grew louder with each step. Ethan took a small emergency flashlight from his bag. Its dim light only illuminated the path for a few feet. The same door was open in front of him. He slowly entered. The room was even stranger than before. There were old speakers on the walls all around, and hundreds of microphones hanging upside down from the ceiling. A wooden chair was placed in the middle of the room, as if someone was being forced to confess. As soon as Ethan took a step forward, whispers began to be heard from all the speakers at once. "Save us." He took our voices. Don't look back. These were the voices of different people. Men, women, old people, children. All were asking for help together. A cold wave ran through Ethan's body. Suddenly, a voice was heard that stood out from the rest. "Ethan, if you want to live, don't sit on the chair." It was a woman's voice. Ethan asked in shock, "Who are you?" A few moments later, a faint light appeared in a corner of the room. She was a hazy spirit, a woman of about 30. White dress, yellow face, and fear in her eyes. "My name is Sarah Miller. I came here 8 years ago, and I could never go back." Ethan asked in surprise, "Are you alive or?" Sarah said with a sad smile, "My body is dead, but my voice is still imprisoned in this curse." She pointed to the wall. There was a very old picture there. The picture was of this same church, but dozens of people were standing in front of it. And there was also a long black shadow between them all. Sarah said slowly, "People call him the listener. He doesn't kill people, he steals their voice. And when the voice is gone, then a person slowly loses his memory, his identity, and eventually his soul." Ethan's mind immediately remembered the tape with his name written on it. "So, my voice too." Sarah nodded. "He heard you. You don't have much time now." At that moment, the lights in the entire room turned on automatically. An old mirror appeared in front of the chair. Ethan looked in the mirror, and he screamed in fear. He wasn't alone in the mirror. Behind him stood the same black creature. But when he immediately turned around, the room was empty. Sarah's spirit said in a panic, "Don't look in the mirror again." But it was too late. The surface of the mirror began to ripple like water, and a long black hand came out of it. That hand moved straight towards Ethan's neck. Ethan stepped back to save himself, but his neck was marked by ice-cold fingers. At that moment, a bell rang in the basement. Once, twice, 3 times. Sarah's face turned white with fear. "He's coming." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the darkness. Knock, knock, knock. The walls shook with each step. Sarah quickly handed Ethan an old silver cross. "Hold it. It might save you from this for a while. But if it breaks, then no one will be able to save you." The sound of footsteps had now come right outside the door. The door handle slowly began to turn on its own. See-char-rar-rar. The door opened a few inches, and 2 white eyes appeared out of the darkness. The door slowly opened completely. At first, only 2 white eyes were visible in the darkness. Then the same 7-foot-tall black creature entered the room. The sound of its footsteps echoed throughout the basement. Knock, knock, knock. There was no nose, no lips, no human form on its face. Only 2 glowing eyes, and a black smoke that was constantly coming out of its body. Ethan tightly gripped the silver cross that Sarah had given him. As the creature took another step forward, the cross began to glow with a faint blue light. The listener paused for a few moments. For the first time, he turned his neck towards Ethan. Then a cold voice echoed in his mind. "You did not come alone. Someone has shown you the way." At that moment, Sarah's soul quickly retreated. "Ethan, don't stop, come with me." The back wall of the room suddenly opened, and a narrow tunnel appeared. Ethan immediately ran into it. The listener's terrifying scream was heard from behind. His voice was like thousands of people screaming at once. The tunnel was very long. There were strange markings on the walls. Under each marking was a single sentence: "Silence is eternal." After a while, they arrived at a very large cave. This was not the basement. This was a world far below it. In the middle of the cave was a black lake, the water of which was completely still. There were no waves in this water, but faint whispers were coming from within it. Ethan shone the flashlight on the water, and his heart stopped. Hundreds of human faces could be seen at the bottom of the lake. They were imprisoned underwater. Their eyes were open, and their mouths were constantly moving, as if they were asking for help, but no sound was coming out of them. Sarah said softly, "These are the people whose voices were taken away." When the listener steals someone's voice completely, then their soul is imprisoned in this lake forever. Ethan asked helplessly, "How can they be freed?" Sarah fell silent. After a few moments, he pointed to the other side of the cave. There was a huge stone door. There was a strange sign carved on it, and under it was written only one word: "Archive." "There," Sarah said softly. "All the voices that it has stolen in 100 years are preserved. If the archive is destroyed, then maybe everyone will be free." Ethan took a step towards the door, but suddenly the entire cave began to shake. The water in the lake began to shake. The faces of the imprisoned souls began to rise together. They all said the same sentence for the first time. "He came." A whirlpool began to form in the middle of the water. Slowly, a second, much larger version of the listener began to emerge from it. Ethan was stunned, too. Sarah shook her head in fear. "No, the one above. That was just a shadow. This is the listener." The water in the lake suddenly began to overflow. Large stones began to fall from the ceiling of the cave. The door to the archive opened automatically. Blue light spread out from within it. Sarah shouted, "Ethan, run now." Ethan ran towards the archive with all his might. As he entered the door, he looked back one last time. The listener was stretching his long black arms towards him, and there were only a few feet between them. As Ethan entered the archive, the giant stone door slammed shut behind him. Bang! The listener's terrifying scream could still be heard outside, but its voice had faded. Ethan took a deep breath and turned on his flashlight. He fell silent as he saw the scene in front of him. This was no ordinary room. This was a huge underground library. Hundreds of long cabinets containing thousands of glass bottles. Inside each bottle, a blue light floated. In some bottles, Children's laughter could be heard. In others, women's sobs. In others, people's last screams. Sarah said in a low voice, "These are sounds. Each bottle contains a human life." Ethan approached one of the bottles. It read, "Emily Carter, 1997. As soon as he touched the bottle, the world around him changed. Suddenly, he found himself standing in an old house. An 8-year-old girl was hiding in a closet in fear. Someone was banging on the door outside. Emily opened the door. The voice was her mother's, but there was something inhuman about it. The door slowly opened, and outside stood the same black shadow with white eyes. The girl screamed, and the scene disappeared. Ethan was in the archive again. His hands were shaking. These aren't just voices. These are also people's last memories. Sarah shook her head. That's why it's called the archive. It preserves the last memory, the last voice, and the last fear of each victim. At the same time, Ethan's eyes fell on an old wooden table in the middle of the room. On it lay a thick, leather-bound diary. On its cover was written in gold letters, "The First Listener." Ethan quickly opened the diary. His face turned pale as he read the first page. The year 1891. We did not create this creature. We woke it up. The diary belonged to a priest, Father Jonathan Reed. He wrote that there was an ancient cave under the church, which the local tribes called the Gate of Silence. They believed that a being slept there who gained strength from human voices. But in 1891, a few people, out of curiosity, opened the door, and after that day, Black Creek was never the same. Suddenly, an old map fell to the ground from the last page of the diary. This map showed another secret passage under the church. At the end of the path, there were only 2 words written, "The Heart." Ethan asked in surprise, "What is this heart?" Sarah looked at him with hopeful eyes for the first time. That is its true power. As long as heart is alive, the listener will never die. At that moment, the walls of the archive began to shake. All the glass bottles began to glow at once. Thousands of voices began to scream at once. "He's in." Ethan immediately looked at the door. Long cracks were beginning to appear on the thick stone wall. From the other side, the sound of something giant hitting the wall was heard. "Damn, damn, damn." With each hit, the wall was crumbling further. Sarah's spirit began to fade. "I can't stay with you much longer. This place is draining my strength." She handed the map to Ethan. "Find heart. Otherwise, there will only be one name written on the next bottle." She looked at Ethan, trembling. Ethan Walker. At that moment, the stone wall completely collapsed. 2 shining white eyes appeared from the dust cloud. But this time, the listener was not alone. Dozens of dark shadows stood behind him, and all of their eyes were fixed on Ethan at once. As the archive wall collapsed, a cold, icy wind spread throughout the room. The dust clouds slowly began to disperse. The listener stood silently among the rubble of the door. Dozens of dark shadows stood behind him as if awaiting his command. The white eyes of all of them were looking at only one person, Ethan Walker. Sarah whispered nervously, "Now, this is the chance." Ethan gripped the map tightly and ran towards a narrow passage on the right side of the archive. The sound of thousands of footsteps began to echo from behind. The shadows were following him. The tunnel was narrower than before. The walls had ancient symbols, but now a phrase was written over and over again. "Every voice has a price." As Ethan moved forward, strange sounds began to ring in his ears. First his mother's voice, then his late grandfather's, then his childhood friend Ryan's. "Ethan, come back. We've been waiting for you." He paused for a moment. "This is impossible." Sarah immediately screamed, "Don't listen. He uses the voices of your own people." Ethan put his hands over his ears and ran. After several minutes, the tunnel ended. In front of him was a giant circular hall. The ceiling of the hall was nowhere to be seen. In the middle stood a huge black pillar. But it wasn't a pillar. It was a giant heart. A living, beating heart. Bang, bang, bang. The entire hall shook with each beat. Thousands of black veins were coming out of this heart, disappearing into the walls of the cave. It seemed as if the entire church was alive with this heart. Ethan said in surprise, "This is the heart." Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, this is the center of this curse." But then his voice changed. "Wait, something is wrong." Ethan looked at the heart carefully. Something was moving inside it. A moment later, the black surface of the heart began to become transparent. And inside it, a human appeared. An old man. His hands were tied in chains. He was still alive. His eyes slowly opened. He looked straight at Ethan. Then he said with great difficulty, "Free me." Ethan was surprised. "Who is this?" Sarah's face went pale. "No, that's not possible. How can he still be alive?" At that moment, Ethan remembered the diary. Father Jonathan Reed, 1891. He asked in a trembling voice, "Is this that priest?" Sarah shook her head silently. He woke the creature, but he couldn't stop it. His soul was imprisoned inside that heart. The old man opened his eyes again. "Get me out. I can finish him off." Ethan had just taken a step forward when the entire hall was suddenly plunged into darkness. Only the red beating of the heart remained. Then a familiar voice rang out. "Lies." The listener slowly emerged from the darkness. But this time it was many times bigger than before. His white eyes were now red. He opened his mouth for the first time. There was only darkness inside him. "He is deceiving you. If you free him, then the world will not remain silent." Ethan looked at the old man imprisoned in his heart, and at the listener with the other. Both were calling each other liars. But who is telling the truth? At that moment, words began to appear automatically on the back of the map. Only one can be freed. The heart or the world. The blood drained from Ethan's face. He realized that he had not come just to save his life. But now he had to make a decision that could change the fate of the entire world. And then, the listener extended his long black sleeve towards Ethan. While the old man imprisoned inside the heart shouted for the last time, "Don't listen to him." The listener's black arm was slowly moving towards Ethan. Father Jonathan Reed, imprisoned inside the heart, was shaking the chains with all his might. "Ethan, if you don't decide today, then thousands more people will become victims of this curse." On the other hand, the listener's echoing voice spread throughout the cave. "He's lying. He's the real creator of this curse." Ethan's heart started beating fast. Both were accusing each other, but only one had the truth. At that moment, his eyes fell on the ground. There was a broken stone tablet lying there, on which some words were engraved in an ancient language. Below was only one sentence in English. "The first liar will never lose his voice." Ethan read this sentence aloud. For a moment, the cave was completely silent. Suddenly, Father Jonathan fell silent. While the listener took a step back for the first time, Ethan pondered. Every time he got closer to the truth, the listener became restless. He went closer to his heart and looked carefully. There were strange markings on the priest's chains. One of them was exactly the same as the one on the last page of Archive's diary. Ethan suddenly began to understand everything. He said softly, "You didn't wake him. You wanted to control him." Father Jonathan lowered his eyes. After several moments, he said in a low voice, "Yes. I wanted power. I wanted people to hear my voice. I performed the ancient ritual, but I couldn't control him. He took my voice, my soul, everything." Sarah stared at him in amazement. For the first time in so many years, the truth had come out. The listener said again, "I was not created by humans. Human desires shaped me. Every lie, every deception, every voice used to suppress others. I am a reflection of them." Ethan was silent for a few moments. He realized that the listener was not just a creature, but a curse born from the dark desires of humans. But it was still necessary to stop him. At that moment, Sarah suddenly screamed, "Ethan, look at the heart." That black heart was beating faster than ever. Cracks were starting to form in it. Blue light was coming out of these cracks. And with each beat, the screams of the souls trapped in the lake could be heard. A new sentence appeared on the map. "The heart can only be destroyed by the voice that was never stolen." Ethan asked in surprise. Whose voice is that? Sarah looked at him. There was hope in his eyes. He hasn't completely stolen your voice yet. There's still time. The listener let out a terrible scream in anger. The entire cave shook. Large stones began to fall from the ceiling. The black veins wrapped around the heart began to move towards Ethan like living snakes. Sarah gave him back the same silver cross, which was now brighter than before. This is the last chance. If you use your voice, you may lose the ability to speak forever. But all the imprisoned souls will be free. Ethan gripped the cross tightly. He glanced at Sarah, at the souls imprisoned in the lake, and then into the listener's red eyes. He took a deep breath. If my voice can end this curse, then I am ready. As he raised the cross to his heart, the listener charged towards him with lightning speed, and there was only a step between them. The listener rushed towards Ethan with lightning speed. His black arms cut through the air and went straight to Ethan's throat. Just a moment, and everything could have ended. But Ethan swung the silver cross in front of him with all his strength. A powerful sphere of blue light came out of the cross. The listener screamed in pain for the first time. His scream was so terrifying that the entire cave shook. The water in the lake began to boil. The imprisoned souls began to raise their hands to the sky together. Sarah shouted, "Ethan, now!" Ethan placed the cross directly on the beating heart. The heartbeat stopped. Just for a moment, the whole world seemed to fall silent. Then Ethan closed his eyes. He remembered the sentence written on the map. The heart can only be destroyed by the voice that was never stolen. He gathered all his strength and said loudly, "I free all these souls." As soon as these words echoed in the cave, a huge explosion of white light from the cross. A deep crack appeared in the heart. Bang, bang, bang. With the third beat, the heart shattered into thousands of pieces. At that moment, the listener screamed so loudly that the entire church shook. His black body began to turn into smoke. His red eyes began to fade. All the black veins spread throughout the cave began to break into ash. The souls trapped in the lake began to be freed one by one. Thousands of particles of blue light rose into the air. Emily, Michael, Lucas, and all the people whose names were written on the walls of the basement, all slowly turned into light and began to disappear. Sarah came in front of Ethan. For the first time, her face was at peace. "You did it. We are free." Tears of joy began to flow from her eyes. A few moments later, her existence also turned into light. "Thank you, Ethan." And she disappeared forever. But there was a price to pay. Ethan tried to speak. "Sarah?" But no sound came out of his mouth. Not a single word. His voice had disappeared forever. He just stood there in silence. A few moments later, the entire cave began to collapse. The roof was collapsing. The walls were crumbling. Ethan ran outside with his last strength. The tunnels were collapsing one by one. Finally, he reached the main hall of the church. As he stepped out, the entire St. Mary's Church sank into the ground behind him. It was as if the building had never been there. The first rays of morning had appeared. The sun had risen over Black Creek for the first time in years. Those strange whispers in the air were no longer there. Silence, but this time, a peaceful silence. 6 months later, Ethan restarted his YouTube channel, but now he could never speak. He told his stories only through writing and videos. People considered it a miracle. No one knew the real truth. One day, an old, unmarked parcel arrived at his house. There was only one thing inside. That old tape recorder. Ethan's hands began to shake. He gently pressed the play button. There was only silence for a few moments. Then a new voice was heard. It wasn't his own voice, nor was it the listener's. It was a child's whisper. "You've only closed one door. Down, there are still 7 doors left." The recorder stopped automatically. At that moment, the map on Ethan's desk began to burn. The name of a new place appeared on the burning paper, Raven Hollow, and beneath it was a single sentence: "The silence never ends." Ethan looked out the window silently. Far away, at the edge of the forest, 2 white eyes flashed for a few seconds. and then disappeared into the darkness. The end. Or is it?